Teenage years are turbulent, exciting times. With the changes in adolescent bodies can come equally dramatic shifts in mood, behaviour and interests. But sometimes those interests and activities become antisocial. The Dunedin study wanted to know if it could predict which teenagers would go off track and why. Professor Terry Moffat thought she had the answer. She'd identified a group of young children who had been displaying antisocial tendencies back in kindergarten.
They started hitting other children and biting other children and kicking other children and stealing other children's toys when they were, as young as 2 or 3, and they've carried on with antisocial behavior.
As Moffat tracked study members into adolescence, she expected to see the kids who'd been troublesome toddlers become the bulk of teenage offenders. But that's not what happened. When study members reached 15, the ranks of delinquents increased dramatically. Large numbers of teens with no previous history of trouble started fighting, stealing, and other antisocial activities.
So I had to think, why are so many young people taking up delinquent offending in the middle of adolescence, but without any kind of a childhood history of any kind of signs that would have led us to suspect there was something wrong? It just came out of the blue.
Paul and Gary were 2 of those teenagers.
I was a very typical teenager, knew better than my parents. Whatever was going on, I was into it. Alcohol and partying and, stealing alcohol from our parents and then progressing on to stealing alcohol from strangers and burglaries, those sorts of things. It was just super exciting.
I'll do, all sorts, just mischief. Drugs, speed or marijuana, breaking into cars and doing house burglaries. Yeah, it's just one big adventure, and you're not thinking consequential,
I knew I was having a good time, so I thought that everyone else was just, some kind of chump, I suppose, basically.
And it wasn't just a few isolated teens who were acting up.
When they're teenagers, they get in trouble in groups, like a team sport, an element of competition against your friends who can do the worst things, sensation-seeking, risk-taking, preference of danger over boredom.
The Dunedin study found by the age of 21, 60% of males had stolen property or money. 75% had been involved in some kind of violence. And almost 90% had abused drugs or alcohol. These figures were far higher than expected. The study revealed that teenage offending is the norm, not the exception.
The majority have engaged at some time in some form of behaviour which could have led to prosecution. So you can no longer think of this as just a curious, deviant group.
But why would well-behaved kids suddenly become antisocial?
Around the time of puberty, there's an increase in sensation-seeking and novelty-seeking and reward-seeking. And this is natural and normative, and it impels individuals toward more exciting behaviors.
This thirst for excitement and recklessness is reflected in accident statistics. Teens between the ages of 16 and 19 are 4 times more likely to be involved in a car crash. And if other teenagers are in the car, the risk of the crash being fatal doubles. Other types of accident follow the same pattern, including drownings.
Even though adolescents presumably are a lot stronger and better swimmers, it's because they take more chances. So we think that it has to do with what's going on in the brain during adolescence.
Adolescent brains are a work in progress, They're being rewired and restructured. The changes start at the back of the brain. The parts of the brain responsible for judgment and self-control at the front come last. This makes teenagers particularly prone to risky and reckless behaviour. They focus on the present and fail to think about possible long-term